Thank you all for joining us here at the Cuyahoga Land Bank today. I want to talk to you about something that we didn't have as a primary focus, but it has been a fabulous benefit for the land bank, and that is historic preservation. I cut my teeth in historic preservation years ago, and through consulting was part of a group of people who did the first applications for tax credits in Ohio through the historic preservation process. So this is something that I've come to love over the years, saving these wonderful buildings that are part of our history. So without further ado, let me take you through an overview of the land bank process, and so you'll understand the mechanisms which allow us to do historic preservation. So first of all, land banks with the powers that we have at the Land Reutilization Corporation were created by the legislature of Ohio. Senate Bill 353, and there was a public purpose written into that law, and this public purpose is that we do 4 core things. We facilitate the reclamation, rehabilitation, reutilization of vacant, abandoned, tax foreclosed, or other real property. We efficiently hold and manage that real property pending its reclamation, rehabilitation, or reutilization. We assist governmental entities and nonprofits and for-profits in the assembly of real property and the clearing of title in a coordinated manner, and we promote economic and housing development in our county or the region as needed. So that's what the state said we'd do. Our promise in Cuyahoga County through the mission statement is that we will strategically acquire properties, return them to productive use, reduce blight, increase property values, support community goals, and improve the quality of life for our county residents. So we got a busy task ahead of us, and we started our task soon after the state legislature empowered Cuyahoga County to create the first land bank of its kind in the state of Ohio. So in May of 2009, we were, the county commissioners passed legislation to create a community improvement corporation, which is what we are, and in July of 2009 we opened our doors. So what is a land reutilization corporation? It's a nonprofit government-purposed corporation structured under 115 of the Internal Revenue Services Code. So we're a community improvement corporation in Ohio. We're created by county government. We stand alone and independent of county government, even though our funding stream is from county government. We have some governmental powers. We're capable of private enterprise-like transactions, so we can buy, sell, lend, borrow, and issue bonds. And we're supposed to do all of it quickly and efficiently, just like a private real estate-based corporation. So let me go over the type of operations you'd see in our organization. Initially, we looked at pipelines of tasks and strategies. Primarily, we knew in Cuyahoga County that Fannie Mae, HUD, and the tax foreclosure process would provide us with large pools of property so that we could make impactful change. So we entered into agreements with both Fannie Mae and HUD that were one of a kind in 2009. So first we signed with Fannie Mae in November of 2009, and they started sending us low-value, vacant, foreclosed, abandoned properties to which they had taken title. And so every month via a pool agreement, which continues through today as we approach our 3rd birthday in July, we receive on a monthly basis a pool of low-value properties from Fannie Mae for which we pay them $201, and if it is a property that we assess as being demolition bound, they provide us with 50% of the cost for demolition, which we estimate at $3,500. Because sometimes it's approximately $7,500 for a demo, and other times it's $10,000. On occasion, we've gotten a demolition of a small house for as little as $4,600. With HUD, we have a one-of-a-kind agreement with them too. They provide us the low-value properties in their portfolio in Cuyahoga County for $100, but we don't receive any demolition funds. They, of course, tell us that the county, and it's separate from the land bank, has received neighborhood stabilization funds from them, and so we should be using those countywide to do various forms of demolition. At any rate, with HUD, every week we receive a new pool of properties to evaluate for acceptance. With both HUD and Fannie Mae, the only reason we can reject a property is if it is occupied. There are liens in the titles that have not been cleared, and so we do lien searches. Those kinds of problems are the only ones for rejecting the properties. And then the Board of Revision, which is the process where properties are tax foreclosed in Ohio. The law changed in 2007 or 2008 to allow county treasurers to foreclose on properties because the delinquent taxes were significant and there was a potential for redevelopment. So, summarizing this, you see that we receive properties from REOs or banks, GSEs like Fannie Mae, HUD. People can donate, individuals can donate properties to us if they're tax delinquent, and we clear all the publicly generated tax liens filed on the property, with them donating the property to us and county government agreeing that we can wipe them out. And then they go through our triage. We assess them, we evaluate them, we decide whether they should be rehabbed or demolished, and you see the different sources at the bottom of the screen. We send them into holding, mothball. We hold them for rehabilitation. We sell them to a qualified buyer. We demolish them and turn them into side yard opportunities or an opportunity for a property owner to expand their home, do green space or urban gardens, and we create a holding strategy for economic development in partnership with the nonprofits and the municipal governments that we have memorandums of understanding with. So what's going on with this volume when we approach the 3-year mark? Well, we receive 35 to 40 properties from HUD every month, approximately 20 from Fannie Mae. We can receive as many as 80 from the tax foreclosure process, or BOR. We typically see 20 properties a month from REOs, which are banks, real estate holding entities. So we have an agreement with Bank of America. We see properties from Wells Fargo, Citibank, or whatever they're called this month, and occasionally Chase. And in addition, we have some investors who have provided us with their properties, and we ask those investors, when they're low value and in need of demolition, to pay us $7,500 per property. And that allows us to demolish, do testing for asbestos, those kinds of things. In addition, the housing court in the city of Cleveland likes to send properties that have really gone too far. They have a ton of citations, those kinds of things. Judge Pianka is sending owners to us regularly, and when they do not have liens from a lender or credit card companies or other miscellaneous private sources, when it's basically just tax or municipally generated taxes, we can wipe those out, and that averages about 10 a month. So you can see that we're well over 100 properties a month now at the land bank, and that's keeping us fairly busy. If we decide to rehabilitate a property, there are 3 ways in essence that we remove the property from our portfolio. We're selling to individuals for rehabilitation, and we're not just selling them unless it's a nonprofit where we know that they're going to do rehabilitation. We ask them to give us a commitment to do certain types of improvement over a short-term period, and that short-term period is typically 6 months. There's something we call a deed in escrow, where we put the deed to the house in escrow, receive a commitment from the potential owner to do rehabilitation. We agree on the rehabilitation specifications, and over that 6-month period, they rehab. We still have title to the property, and once they have completed their rehabilitation activity, they pay for the house. Typically the house is $15,000 or less in value, and then we transfer the house to them with them putting the money in escrow, and once the rehabilitation is complete, the transfer is completed. Because we were recipients of Neighborhood Stabilization Fund, we had a special pool of sales that we did with contractors who had entered into agreements with the City of Cleveland and Cuyahoga County to do Neighborhood Stabilization Program sales. And those were in 20 targeted areas throughout Cuyahoga County. And that's why it has right now a separate category. For the next year, we will be doing NSP2 sales. And then last but not least, we have a team of professionals inside the organization whose sole responsibility is to do rehabilitation specifications and structure in-house straight sales to folks. We rehab the house. We may have paid nothing for it, or as much as $25,000, I think, is the most we've paid for a property. We add in the rehabilitation costs, and we place the property on sale. So in probably 7 different communities across Cuyahoga County, we have rehabbed houses and have them for sale now, some of which have sold. The first 2 houses were in the City of Cleveland, and we broke even on them. We didn't make much money. Then there's the property management task that we have day to day. With the acquisition of properties, we have to change the locks, mow the grass, pick up litter, winterize the properties if there's winter. And as most of you know, or all of you know, it gets cold here in Cleveland in the wintertime because we have folks from as far away as Texas in the south and Maine in the north. So yes, it gets cold, and the houses have to be winterized to make sure that there aren't bursting pipes and flooding into adjacent properties. And then there's demolition. Probably 75 to 80% of the properties that we take title to go on our demolition list. And we have tasks like asbestos surveys and reports, demolition specifications to develop, asbestos abatement, bidding, site inspections when the demolition is complete. So there are a wide variety of tasks related to demolition. So we had a strategy throughout this process. What to take, what not to take. We're searching various databases, encouraging people to work with us. We use something called Neo-Can-Do to talk about how we work to do site assembly and how it can be impactful. Unfortunately, sometimes even though we try to acquire properties that are adjacent to each other, have some proximity so that we can build parcels in areas so that we can do redevelopment in a consolidated way, that doesn't take place because our primary providers of properties, the REOs, Fannie Mae, HUD, they are not providing us with properties that are consistently contiguous, adjacent, or abutting. So our major systems are in pretty good shape. When we are trying to decide whether something is ready for rehab or is something we should demolish, we look to see whether the structural things in that property, the heating, the roof, the sidewalls, the foundation, the bathroom, the kitchen, are they in good shape? Is there a market for this house, apartment building, or commercial property, since we can take any kind of property into our land bank? Can we resell it? Will somebody buy this from us and then invest money in it, even if we have it selling for $100? And how long can the organization hold in our organization? How long can we hold and pay for property maintenance? So to date, we are only taking commercial properties if we have a third party who's willing to take that property from us in 18 months or less. With 4-unit apartment buildings or smaller, we will take those on a regular basis any and every day. But when they are large structures, we reject those unless we have a partner who's willing to participate with us in taking the property in a short-term period. And we enter either into a purchase agreement or a development agreement to structure that so that everyone knows the terms under which a property needs to be transferred. So to date, what have we done since we opened our doors? In summary, we've acquired over 1,600 properties. We've demolished almost 900 properties. We have, after demolition, transferred over 723 of those properties out, and we have rehabilitated and sold almost 200 properties. So we've been busy. And this brings us to the reason you're all here today. Can historic preservation and land banking work together? The statutory purposes of land banking create an opportunity for Ohio's communities to do historic preservation. On this page you see an apartment building, a brick built around 1900 in the city of Cleveland, and a single-family house in Shaker Heights. Both of these properties are historic in nature. First, we know that the enabling legislation creating our public purpose gave us the ability to do this, because the four things you have to remember about all land banks in Ohio is that they have the ability, that are created under the either Senate Bill 353 or House Bill 313, is that they have the ability to facilitate the reclamation, rehabilitation, reutilization of vacant, abandoned, tax foreclosed, or other real properties. We can take them and hold them for a partnership. We can assist government entities, nonprofits, and for-profits in those redevelopment activities by clearing title in a coordinated manner. We sometimes ask banks to forgive a mortgage and transfer the property to us. It helps them with their community reinvestment activities. And we are supposed to promote economic development and housing development in our county or regions wherever we're located. We, of course, were the first of our kind. We were established 2 years before anybody else could be created. But now the major counties are all creating land banks, and Toledo has been, Lucas County has had their land bank open a little over a year now, so I'm sure there's someone from their land bank in Lucas County on the phone, so shout out to y'all. This match with historic preservation, how does it begin? We find a historic property, or someone else finds it, and they bring it to our attention. Then, if the property is vacant, abandoned, or has tax liens, we can work what I call our magic powers. So the project, it could be delayed due to funding rounds or gaps, and what happens is that we could take title to it and hold it, so that we wait for the funding rounds to take place, we wait for people to structure their financing, or get, if it's a nonprofit, a for-profit partner in place. Those are all the kinds of things that we can do. And we need, if a party needs to reduce the holding costs, we're your partner, because during that process we don't pay taxes. We've negotiated really controlled property maintenance agreements with the 5 firms that work with us. And so we are able to control not only the maintenance costs, but the tax costs, which are basic costs that happen to any property. So if any of those things have happened on a project, you might need a county land reutilization corporation land bank in a county near you. So here's an example of a historic match. I know my friends at the Cleveland Restoration Society said they were going to phone in. So our first project of a historic nature was done with CRS. So this is what happened. There was a property located at 19027 Chagrin Boulevard in Cuyahoga County. That's in the city of Shaker. So you see the house before. And CRS contacted the land bank, that's us, and said this house has been vacant, although it's owned by a party. Could you help us out? Because during the holding period, we'd have to pay taxes. So this is my version of what happened. So here you see the house. They tried to sell it. They couldn't sell it. And how do we know it's historic? Well, we know when it was built, and it's a century house built in 1836, and the Shaker Historical Society has it registered. It's in a district. How can we help? This is what we did. We entered into an acquisition, field service, and maintenance agreement, which made specifications between the two parties on who we were, what we could do, and most importantly, how we could do it. So CRS was able to develop a restoration plan during the period we held it. It was held tax-free. The prior owner was able to receive a federal tax break because any donation that we took, we have an opinion from Squire, Sanders, and Dempsey, one of the larger, higher profile law firms, not only in the state but in the country, that donations made to our land bank can be tax exempt if there's an appropriate appraisal of the property, and that depends on the donator. They've got to get the right appraisal and turn it into the feds. And then CRS had a time frame to find the right buyer. So believe it or not, we gave them 18 months, and our friends at Cleveland Restoration Society were fabulous. They took this property from us, donated this property to us, and called us 7 months later and asked us to sell it to a third party. The property before is in the top left-hand corner, and the property afterwards is in the lower right-hand corner. You see that they invested in giving it a facelift on the exterior. They did some interior maintenance work. We made sure that the lawn and the exterior maintenance kinds of activities took place on a regular basis and left them free to focus on interior things and to work with a potential buyer. I won't tell you what they made. They can tell you what they made, but they made a little money on this transaction, and our costs were minimal, so we didn't charge them anything. We can be flexible on that. And so here's the bottom line. Who can have a county land reutilization corporation? A county with a population greater than 100,000. Your county commissioners can create it via legislation, and your county treasurer will create an income stream for that property. So what we can do is take title to the land, hold it tax exempt. We can transact quickly and efficiently. For example, the CRS, Cleveland Restoration Society, brought us the deed on a Monday, and by Friday we transferred title into our name. And just to be flashy, once we took a property from the Board of Revision. It was a direct title transfer on a Monday, and on a Tuesday we transferred it to a municipality. So we aim to act as quickly as any private entity. We can buy, sell, lend, borrow, issue bonds, do redevelopment with a partner. So it's just about anything a private for-profit real estate company can do, we can do. It's almost like we're singing that song, anything you can do, we can do better, except they can't hold things in a tax-exempt manner, and that's one of the reasons we're special. Thank you. That's the quick and dirty story of how to form a land bank and how to enter into a partnership that can preserve historic properties. Questions?
Thank you, Cheryl. Yes, we'll be taking questions now. Please type those into your chat box and send them over. And while we're taking a break and letting you send those questions in, a few commercial announcements. To start off with, Heritage Ohio, as Ohio's official historic preservation and Main Street organization, Heritage Ohio fosters economic development and sustainability through preservation of historic buildings, revitalization of downtown and neighborhood commercial districts, and promotion of cultural tourism. So if you enjoyed today's webinar, please think about becoming a member of Heritage Ohio. You can find more information about that on our website, which is www.heritageohio.org. A couple quick announcements of future events coming up. First of all, coming up, we have our conference next week. So it's going to be in Toledo, Ohio, downtown at the Grand Plaza Hotel, May 8th, 9th, and 10th. And if you haven't registered yet, you got a couple more days to do that online. So check it out on our website, www.heritageohio.org. And finally, our next webinar coming up is going to be with the Office of Community Development, part of the Ohio Department of Development, and we're going to be discussing discretionary grants from that office. So please tune in, and that'll be on June 6th at 1 p.m. And let's see what questions we have coming in. Okay, first question is from Ann. Ann would like to hear more about the in-house redevelopment approach. Can you provide more details on this?
A couple of our staff are skilled redevelopment experts. I myself have done projects nationally as well as in the state of Ohio. So what we do are our basic standard underwriting of transactions first. We look for people to bring them to us with the key components at least thought out. What are your potential sources? What's your total project cost? How you can find elements of funding either privately or publicly, have at least letters of interest from those parties or conversations with them, and we look to be one of the last partners necessary in the transaction. For example, unless it's to get the land to the transaction in the first place. So, for example, we have a couple of projects in the city of Cleveland where we are taking vacant foreclosed land off the forfeiture list for the sum total of probably $500 or $600, and then we will hold it, do basic cleanup, and sell it to a for-profit business for the expansion of those properties. So we can control the cost into a project, or, for example, we sell it for $100,000 when typically the market rate would have been $500,000 or $600,000. Or we can stay in the deal and they can pay us over time. To date, we've asked for cash up front. We have not held anything, over time, but there is the potential to do that. We can structure mortgages or long-term repayment. So we can act as an economic development entity, just like city's Department of Economic Development or a real estate developer in pulling land and financing together and then entering into a partnership with a nonprofit.
Thank you. Bob has a question on what is a side yard program?
Okay, our side yard program is when we demolish between two houses, the lot may not be large enough for a neighborhood garden, nor may either of the two neighbors adjacent to the lot want people coming and gardening between them every evening through from spring to early fall. So each of the adjacent neighbors is offered the opportunity to purchase the lot. In some cases, we've had both neighbors want the lot, and so on occasion we have done a survey of the lot, split it down the center, and charged each of the neighbors half of the cost of the survey and the plat filing costs. So the costs range depending on which city it's been in, from probably $1,300 totally to $2,500, which meant each of the property owners paid anywhere from $750 to $1,100 or so for the lots. And that's added, they typically are asked to consolidate that with their existing parcel if they're going to put a garage or expand their home onto that lot, but basically it is the transfer of lots after demolition to adjacent property owners.
Thanks, Cheryl. We have a question from Mandy. Mandy is asking what processes are in place to identify historic properties coming into the land bank and direct them toward start that over, getting tongue-tied here. What processes are in place to identify historic properties coming into the land bank, and how are you directing them towards rehabilitation rather than demolition?
Well, we can't always save every historic property, even though that is a primary goal, because we all want to save good and soundly structured properties. To identify properties, we have a fabulous IT team here. Our director is Mike Schramm, formerly with Neo Can Do and Case Western Reserve's MSAS programming. So he has overlaid into our property profile system the historic districts in Cuyahoga County, as well as data from the county fiscal officer, or in most other counties, the county auditor, that tells us the approximate age of construction of the properties. And that lets us know whether it's in a historic district because of the map overlays from the historic districts that have been filed, as well as the age, making it candidate because it's more than 70 years old. So we have two mechanisms that immediately pop up onto our screen when we put the permanent parcel number into our property profile system. Sometimes because of the cost of a property, we may kind of back away from the cost of the rehabilitation of a historic property, notify some of our partners of that property, and encourage them to take on the rehabilitation. So it is not automatic that we will take a historic property and face the challenge. We prefer that our partners do that, and we facilitate the transfer of the property. We would like to reduce our inventory as quickly as possible at the land bank. While we can hold, it is not our goal to hold properties forever. We'd love for them to be rehabilitated because, remember, the primary goal of this agency is to increase the values of real estate across Cuyahoga County. And to do that, we hope investment will be made in the properties and they will be returned to the marketplace.
Thank you. Victoria has a question on, are you getting any pushback from community members when you're demolishing homes? And if so, how are you dealing with it as an organization?
Well, just as happens in any community, yes, we get pushback because there are people who believe that almost any house can be saved, and that is correct if you have hundreds of thousands of dollars to invest in any individual house. Sometimes it's cheaper to build a new house than to rehabilitate an old house. That's a cost-benefit analysis. Each community, and we're dealing with 59 different communities in Cuyahoga County, or nonprofit group, because a lot of communities do have nonprofits inside them. The City of Cleveland has, I believe, over 20 nonprofits that are focused on redevelopment activities. So those two entities have to decide what is a priority for them in certain areas. We'll work with whatever those communities' individual priorities are. So there are communities where we save things, and there are communities where we have significant demolition going on. So it's the best way for us to figure out what a community wants us to do is when they enter into a memorandum of understanding with us and give us directions on what should be demolished, what should be rehabilitated. If there are target areas for things, we ask for that. We try to work with staff. Do we stumble and fall occasionally? Yes. We hope we don't stumble and fall a lot, but we try to continue to stay in contact with our partner communities. There are communities across Cuyahoga County that we either have two forms of agreements with. The Memorandum of Understanding, which spells out what we should do for rehab, what we should do for demolition, how we'll work with commercial buildings, and the agency agreements, which authorize us to do demolition and act as the city's agent on their behalf. So rarely are we buying and demolishing in a community without some guidance from the city, and a lot of times we have built relationships with the nonprofits. But there are always people who will have a different opinion than we do. We try to listen to them, find out what the best perspective is from what they've said, talk to the local elected officials and staff to get guidance about what they want done, and so we are continuously working with our partner communities. But have we demolished houses that people didn't want us to demolish? I have to say yes. But do we try and avoid it as much as possible? Yes. But in some cases when, for example, Fannie Mae gives us money to demolish the structure, we and HUD or Fannie Mae may have decided that a structure should come down. So if a nonprofit or an individual says, or an elected official, why are you taking this property down? One of the things we do up front is we do an assessment of the property inside and outside, so we know if the major systems are failing, and occasionally a house has some residual curb appeal, but the inside, the foundation is bad. There's water in the basement that has leaked through substantive cracks or separations in the foundation. Thieves have been in and ripped all the plumbing out. The roof is on its 5th through 7th patch. The windows are old and they all have asbestos glazing, and they don't provide any warmth. So they're, when 3 out of 6 or 7 systems fail, it is highly likely that the structure should be demolished.
Thank you, Cheryl. Stacy has a question on the same kind of subject. She's asking if you experienced any pushback from the Cleveland Public Schools due to loss of property taxes, or DTAC, when the land bank was being established, or now after it's existed for a few years.
There were concerns about the value of the work that we place into the community. A structure that had not paid taxes in 5 to 10 years is not going to generate income just because it exists. And if it fails our initial tests, on every single property we take into the land bank, even if we're passing it on because it is going to be rehabilitated, we go in, we take pictures, we assess the health of the structure. And so we know on every single property we take title to, before we take title to it, whether it was a contributing member of the real estate market. If it was not, and if it was tax delinquent substantively, then we have a reason to take it out of the marketplace and create the vacant parcel. In some cases, that vacant and abandoned house that was in really bad shape not only was not paying taxes, it was causing the value of the adjacent properties to drop. A study done by the county treasurer in Cuyahoga County sometime in the mid-2000s, it was around 2004, 2005, found that for every house that faced a vacant, abandoned house in really bad shape, that house, even if you were a good homeowner, had a new kitchen, reinvested in your bathrooms, painted on a regular cycle, your lawn was immaculate, you lost on average $10,000 to $11,000 worth of value. And if there was more than one house like that on your street, your value began to plummet. So removing that vacant, abandoned house allows your value to increase back to what it should be. The Federal Reserve is studying with us the impact of removing these negative properties from the marketplace. And it looks like removing these negative properties increases the value of houses that are being well maintained, and we think that is a primary solution to getting property values back up and increasing the cash flow of all of the school districts throughout Cuyahoga County.
Thank you, Cheryl. Denise, or Erin is asking, sorry about that, Erin is asking, what does a citizen do to start the conversation in their community to get a land bank started where one doesn't exist currently?
I represent a county land bank. There are two pieces of legislation in Ohio. You can have a city or a municipal land bank, which is capable of taking vacant parcels of land, no structures on them, and a county land bank, which is capable of taking structures. In order to do that, whatever your form of county government is, has to initiate that process. So if you're in Cuyahoga County or Summit County, those are counties that have an executive form of government. So the executive and the county council have to agree that this is a form of government that they want. In the other 86 counties in Ohio, your county commissioners, if you are in excess of 100,000 people, can form a pass the legislation and create a county land bank. They'll have to create an income stream through the treasurer. One of our listeners looked at DTAC, the tax anticipation, delinquent tax anticipation notes, DTAN and DTAC, and delinquent tax anticipation collections. That is the collection of money on real estate taxes that are late. So for example, most of us pay our taxes on time either through our mortgages or individually directly to the county government. But there are a group of people in some counties like Cuyahoga County, since we have over 500,000 parcels of land, there's a significant pool of them who pay late. The principal and interest on those late taxes can be structured into a financing mechanism, a note, where in the marketplace there are folks who will buy those notes. And because we believe that 75% of the people who, and that's a historic evaluation, who will pay their taxes late rather than have them sold to a third party, there's a cash flow. And with that cash flow, we have an income stream. In Cuyahoga County, it's $6 to $7 million, capped at $7 million by an agreement with the county council and the county exec. But in other communities, it may be varying amounts, but it creates a flow of cash to operate this organization and pay for the demolition, rehabilitation, and property maintenance. Those kinds of things can be done in any county once the county commissioners and the county treasurer figure out how to structure those things.
Thank you. Jeanette's asking, for rural counties, is it possible for them to band together if their populations do not by themselves have over 100,000 people?
I'm not sure. I didn't read that carefully into the legislation. But as you saw with the legislation that created Cuyahoga counties, we can operate outside of Cuyahoga County. We can operate in the region by special agreement between our agency and county commissioners in other areas. My boss, the president and general counsel of Cuyahoga County's Land Reutilization Corporation, might be able to answer those questions. Gus Frangos, he can be reached at gfrangos, F-R-A-N-G-O-S, at cuyahogalandbank.org. He is the state expert on most of the legislation. So if you have questions of that type, feel free to contact Gus.
Thank you. We have a question on commercial structures. If you could just discuss a little bit more about the relationships that have developed for the ones that you have accepted.
What we have done is to accept commercial structures, and for commercial structures, we either have a purchase agreement or a development agreement in advance. Recently, we took title to a vacant, abandoned, tax-delinquent Burger King in the city of Cleveland. That structure will probably be demolished in the next 6 months. In advance of taking title to that structure, we entered into an agreement with a nonprofit who had identified a buyer for the parcel who is substantial, and when they are ready for us to transfer that property to them, they will pay us for that structure and the land, and we will transfer title to them. And as part of their negotiation, I'm not sure who will demolish the structure, whether the nonprofit will or the end buyer, but they have an end buyer in mind. And so in some cases, the structure is not sound or good for the adaptive reuse of the later final use. In others, it is usable. And so, for example, we have a transaction where we're waiting for the property to make it to the forfeiture list after a judicial foreclosure and non-sale at sheriff's sale. Once that property is on the forfeiture list, we will take title to it and transfer it to a for-profit operating entity that is located adjacent to it. They will clean out the buildings. We'll do a phase 1 and a phase 2 as a courtesy to that owner. The first year he'll probably mothball the properties, and then he will expand his business into the adjacent structures. So far we've seen everything from buy and demo for the third party to buy, hold, and renovate. And on occasion, we, just as we did with Cleveland Restoration Society, we entered into an agreement about 18 months ago with Cleveland Housing Network to hold a property for them for approximately 18 to 24 months off of Lorraine. And we held it, and it was a historically eligible building. I'm not sure whether they applied for historic tax credits or not, but we held that building for them while they figured out pieces of financing, evaluated if there were any environmental issues inside the structure, things as simple as asbestos and the abatement of that. So we have, I think in the last 18 months, we've probably acquired and held, whether it was for a week or 18 months, 10 to 15 properties.
Thank you. We have a question from Kathleen. When the land bank renovates, is it required that the homeowner or purchaser be low or moderate income?
No, we do not have income restrictions. So that's the beauty of the land bank. The funds invested in us are not primarily funds like the HUD funds where you have a low and moderate income benefit requirement. Now we do, as you saw when you looked at the rehab categories, we do have neighborhood stabilization funds that we took in as part of a collaborative work with the City of Cleveland, Cuyahoga County, Cleveland Metropolitan Housing Authority, and 5 suburban communities. And with those NSP funds, we were required to meet the national objectives, which were at 120% of median income. But other than that pool of funding, nothing else the land bank touches has income restrictions on it.
And Kathleen has a second question. When the land bank sells its renovated houses, can it lose money on the transaction?
Yes, unfortunately, we can. Just that simple.
Mandy has another question. Has the land bank considered renting out properties with a rental management partner as a possible holding strategy?
That is a concept we are continuously considering. We have not reached that point yet, but it may be something that we actually move from the back burner to the front burner in the next year.
All right. Well, I'll give you guys a few more moments if there are any more questions out there. And I just wanted to thank Cheryl today for doing this, and thanking the Cuyahoga Land Bank today for agreeing to do this. This is a great webinar for people to listen to, not only in Ohio, but around the country. A lot of good work that's happening here in Cuyahoga County.
Our friends in Hamilton County, Lucas County, Franklin County, Montgomery County, Trumbull, and Warren have all, the legislators, the county commissioners, have all passed legislation to create county land banks like this one. I'm sure there are more counties out there ready to participate who are considering it, but those are the ones that I know that at least initial legislation or resolutions have been formed and placed on the docket for the commissioners. So there's a lot of work going out there because, unfortunately, the foreclosure crisis impacted us significantly here in Ohio, but it's been bad across the country. The epicenter has moved away from Ohio and Michigan, Indiana, Pennsylvania toward the Great Southwest, so they're dealing with these kinds of activities now. But I, of course, am completely biased. I think a land bank, a countywide land bank, is a fabulous way to begin to deal with your foreclosure problems and to turn vacant, abandoned, and foreclosed properties into opportunities for redevelopment for either an individual homeowner next to it, or when you get the ability to assemble large parcels, or to take commercial properties that have been walked away from and turn them into something else. This is something that most of our counties should invest in.
Thank you, Cheryl. And I'm not seeing any more questions, so just a few parting remarks. That for any of you AIA members, please remember to email me at dmiles@heritageohio.org to get your credit today. Also, our next webinar is going to be on June 6th about discretionary grants from the ODD. I love saying those things. And finally, our presentation will be available later this week. Since the conference is coming up, I'm going to get it up early this time. So you should be able to find the presentation and the video recording of it at our website under our webinar section, under the archive section once you get to that page. And I'll be sending everyone who signed up today an email when I have that up. Thank you. Have a good afternoon, and we'll see you at the next webinar.